really use it for like disruption, visibility, and transparency, right? So like making
Okay.
sure that, the carrier partners and the shipper is aware of what might be happening. I think, in an age where a lot of brokers do the same things, right? Having some of those differentiators are huge. So that's
Mm.
one way, is just like general visibility. Are these lanes going to be impacted? Can I tell my customer? Can I tell my carrier to take a different route? And then also pricing, we found is really interesting. So
Yeah.
spot rates, right? If there is a hurricane or a snowstorm happening in some part of the country, it is good to know about that, because it's going to change, potentially the price of a load.
Welcome to the Think Freight podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Wording. It's my pleasure to have founder and CEO of WeatherOptics, Scott Pecoriello. Scott, thanks for coming on the show today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
You and I were talking a little bit just, a couple seconds ago off camera, like kind of why I reached out to you. And it was kind of selfish reasons on my end. I told you I was traveling last year and I couldn't really find a good like weather planning route app. I was traveling from Houston to Maine for Christmas, and I couldn't find anything that like would help me see along my route where there's going to be inclement weather. And I had to kind of spend every 4 or 5 hours like scouring, the weather channel. Have my girlfriend look at the weather channel, see what we were coming into, and it was kind of stressful, like not having something like that. And what you're doing, like with the side of what, like for brokers and for shippers, I think is really interesting. So I love to kind of dive into you, Scott, kind of your background, who you are, how you got into weather, and then we'll kind of dive into a few other things.
Yeah, that sounds good. So my background in weather actually started when I was much younger. I was like 5 or 6 years old. I've always had a fascination with the weather. I don't know what it was about the weather, but it's existed my entire life. And I actually created sort of like uh, what was supposed to be a simple blog when I was in like middle school and high school, just like predicting
Mm.
how weather was going to impact different areas in the country. And it gained a really big following. We had like tens of thousands of followers on Facebook
Wow.
and on Twitter. And then we were reached out to by the meal kit delivery company, Blue Apron, who was like, hey,
Mm.
we love your forecasts. Could you build us a road index that just like to help us predict delays of our shipments? So
How old
um,
were you when this happened?
this was in college now. This was probably
Okay.
like my sophomore year, junior year of college.
So you're like
Um,
2021.
yeah, right around that
Okay.
age. And I've always loved, like entrepreneurship. Like I always had something going on the side. Like I tried to
Yeah.
create a couple different apps and a couple different platforms, not super weather related, but sometimes weather related. And then this opportunity with Blue Apron, I was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
my chance. I realized that there were all these other companies that probably don't have weather data that can tell them like how they're actually
Mm.
going to be impacted. So me and a good buddy of mine, who's now my co-founder, built basically this road index for Blue Apron. And then that was a number of years ago. And now we've built out this, really effective product for all of supply chain. So, truckers,
Yeah.
shippers, freight brokers, really centered around weather impact on operations.
So let's dive in. I want to talk about a little bit more about this like road index and this first little like thing that you built. Like, so you said you started this in like when you were in high school going into college, right?
Yep.
Wow. So you just kind of took that love of weather and like kind of predicting things and looking at all the data and saying, how can I kind of, look at like maybe make a better prediction than what other people are doing, or taking that data and modeling it and seeing how you can make your own predictions and forecasts just like
Yeah.
everyone else.
Yep.
I think that's really interesting. So and that led to kind of what you're doing today. So something you started a blog when you were, in your late teens led you to where you are today as working with some huge Fortune like 500 companies for helping them with weather. Like that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much how it went. I mean, that blog started when I was back in like middle school. So I was like
Wow.
11,
Wow.
12 years old. You could probably find it
Wow.
still somewhere online. But at the time, let's just say it wasn't very well written, and it got a lot better over the years as I got older. Yeah.
No, that's super cool. So, um, let's dive into. So you said you've always been entrepreneurial, and you had tried a couple different things. I know I looked at your LinkedIn a little bit, and you had done a little bit with like schools and helping with school closures. How did you get into that? Just the
Yeah,
same
that
kind of
was
reason. It was just
same
weather.
same kind of reason.
Mm,
There was, people would always ask me because I was like, people knew I knew the weather and liked the weather, so they'd be like, "What are the chances that school's going to close?" And so I created this really
interesting.
simple app. Like, I'm not a coder, I'm not a data, that's not my background. So I found a site, back in 2013 that like you could do it yourself, low
Like a
code
no code.
development.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I put something together, put it on the App Store, and like by the time I graduated in high school, it had something like 40 or 50,000 downloads, and it was like one of the top
Wow.
15 free weather apps on the App Store. But it was just Connecticut. I was forecasting school closures, so
Okay.
yeah.
Did you ever think when you were building or starting this newsletter just because you like the weather, or when you started this app for weather for schools? Did you ever think that like you would like? Did you always know like I'm gonna just keep building things until something sticks, and I just want to like I want to work for myself, or like, where does that like I guess where's that passion, where's that drive come from?
Yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to work for myself and wanted to do my own thing. Like, I liked being creative,
Yeah.
and building something from the start, right? So I always loved that. And it just, I was really lucky, right, that I was able to find a way to do weather and that kind of entrepreneurship together in one setting. I think, yeah, I got lucky in some regards.
No, that's cool. I want to, from here, I want to dive right into weather optics, what it is, and kind of what you guys do. So, 40,000 foot view, Scott. What is weather optics?
Yeah, so we are a weather intelligence platform that basically translates weather data into actionable insights for businesses. So we always like to say, instead of telling you it's going to rain or snow or the wind's going to be 40 miles per hour, we tell you the chances that roads close or how delayed your shipment's going to be or the risk of your truck tipping over, right? So like
Mm,
everything we do allows companies to much more easily understand how, a storm might impact their operations. And that's sort of what makes us unique as a weather platform, is that we're less focused on the raw weather data and more focused on like the business impact,
mm.
specifically to someone's operations. Yeah.
So, you'd said this, helping understand like whether trucks, whether winds are going to be able to tip trucks over, things like that. And I had mentioned, when we were talking offline, I had told you I'm originally from the Midwest, from Northwest Indiana. There's a pretty big corridor there at I-65, going through Indiana into Kentucky and all that, where it's notorious where if winds get really bad, you can have a lot of like tipping over, and really bad black ice on that section. So I think that it's really interesting how you guys take that like raw information and don't just say, "Hey, on your route it's going to rain." It's more a guidance tool. It sounds like, to where it's, "Hey, you're gonna have a very high probability if you're traveling during this time or this day that you're gonna have a higher probability of tipping over or black ice
Yep.
or whatever." And it's kind of not just like it's basically all weather events. Is that correct?
Yeah. All weather events. And we're spreading out a bit into all natural disasters. So we got
Mm,
some pretty cool stuff coming up that, I'll call it weather adjacent, right? Where it's like not maybe atmospheric, but related
yeah.
to something that, is kind of can't be controlled and is, a natural disaster. Something that I thought was interesting that you said earlier, though, was about how, you were doing the road trip and you didn't have like a good tool. You were checking the weather channel and, trying to figure out,
Yeah.
is my route going to be affected? And it's kind of remarkable. There's a lot of companies that do that same thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's really hard. I mean, just for you, right, to manage one route, right? You're like, hey, I'm going from here to
Yeah.
here. These trucking companies who have like thousands of routes a day or even thousands of trucks, right? That's sort of the
Absolutely.
beauty of what we built, which is like, we're going to automate alerting you when, your vehicle's, at risk of tipping or when there's black ice.
Mm,
That way it's just more manageable. It's something that you don't have to manually operate, every single day.
So you said you can automate a lot of those things. So if you've got trucks like on a certain route that is going to have a new weather impact, something that wasn't originally there, so you just get automatic alerts saying, "Hey, truck 123 on this route is going to be impacted," or how's that work?
Yeah, that's like a good high level way, I think, of looking at it. We
Hmm.
integrated with like all of the ELD providers, right? So like Geotab,
Okay.
Motive, Platform Science. So
Yeah.
we can track, your vehicle wherever it is, and then we actually allow the company to set up alerts. So like, hey, alert me every time this weather condition happens, or like
Hmm.
the road risk score, the WeatherOptics road risk score is above, let's say, a 7. And then every time that truck either gets near that, that instance or is in that condition, will automatically send an alert to that driver. But all of that's super configurable, right? Every
Yeah.
trucking operation is different, which is what I found out, working in the industry, is that it's not one size fits all. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different needs and desires for each company. And so, yeah, we've tried to account for, all of that.
How can like, I know you'd said could this originally kind of all happen because of the road index for Blue Apron? So how can this data be applied for like a freight brokerage or for a shipper who's looking for some of those insights or maybe some more like historical or trend data to understand if on a normal level how are the impacts going to be on my lanes.
Yep. I think there's a couple of different values for like a freight broker, and we work with quite a few of them. So like Sunset Transportation,
Mm.
Reliable Transportation Solutions, both clients of ours, and they really use it for like disruption, visibility, and transparency, right? So like making
Okay.
sure that, the carrier partners and the shipper is aware of what might be happening. I think, in an age where a lot of brokers do the same things, right? Having some of those differentiators are huge. So that's
Mm.
one way, is just like general visibility. Are these lanes going to be impacted? Can I tell my customer? Can I tell my carriers to take a different route? And then also pricing, we found is really interesting. So
Yeah.
spot rates, right? If there is a hurricane or a snowstorm happening in some part of the country, it is good to know about that, because it's going to change, potentially the price of a load. So I would say those are the two
Definitely.
main ways that, the brokers are using us today.
I think that's interesting because Scott, I started in this industry as a broker, and I remember I had a lot of produce that moved out of McAllen and some of Laredo, and I a lot of times was sending stuff to Kroger's or Albertsons or anything like that, going like Denver, Colorado area, Phoenix, Oregon, Washington, and when you get into after November you've really got to know when these weather events are happening because it can just snow out of the blue in Denver or any part of Colorado.
Right.
So I would have these lanes set up where I'd have like 5 a week, and one day out of the week or 2 days out of the week I'd be contacting my normal people or spot carriers, and it would be it would go from 5K to move one of these to 8K, 9K,
Right.
10K, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? Like I wouldn't even know. Like we didn't have that kind of visibility, and I was always like, dang, like if I had known about this, so I had gotten into, and it's tough, as a broker when you've got 150 or 200 loads on the board for the week, and that's just your contracted or what you've been awarded so far. You
Totally.
can't you can't look at all of those loads and pull up the Weather Channel on Monday and say, hey, how is the weather looking? You're going to spend your whole Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday just checking weather. So
Yep.
having a tool like this would have definitely impacted what I did, just being able to stay ahead and telling my shippers, hey, this weather event is happening. You're probably going to have a shift in rates, probably shift in availability. So we need to lock things down quicker, easier. Like I think that's really interesting from a broker perspective to be able to, like you said, it's a value add because when a lot of brokers are doing the same thing, hey, I've got trucks, great, but what can you do differently? And it's providing that value, and weather is certainly a big thing that I think brokers can really add and are missing the mark by not adding.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know much about brokers previously, and our focus was always on carriers and shippers, and we didn't realize there was, this crucial middleman kind of
Yeah.
facilitating a lot of the work in between. And so it was really interesting to let some of these brokers and 3PLs sort of lead the conversation on like how weather impacts them. And it's very similar to what you described. So
Yeah.
yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think that more brokerages definitely, should be or will be adopting more, weather related tech because it is so pertinent. Like you said, it is that value add to stand out for shippers, and it helps you, with more credibility too. It helps you not just be someone who moves freight, but it helps you become a partner in what you're building with them, and not just
Yep.
another number. So. I was taking a look at kind of some of the products, within Weather Optics, and I saw, like you guys have, I think, Right Route and Impact Score. So, what can you talk a little bit more about what those are and how those work?
Yeah. So really, those are like the two categories that we offer. Right route is all
Mm,
routing. So think about anytime you
okay.
have a shipment going from point A to point B, right route is great because we basically simulate your trip and how weather is going to impact your trip, and we do that out to 7 days.
Oh,
So
nice.
we're literally, trying to map what weather events are going to cross maybe a certain shipment or load, right?
Yeah.
And then the impact scores are much more location based. So let's say you had a warehouse or key facility, distribution center, store location, right?
Yeah.
We'll basically give you a score 0 to 10 for how weather is going to impact different key business operations. So that includes
Mm,
power outages, life and property damage, flooding, let's see, wildfires, business disruption, road conditions, all these different scores that you can essentially use to make better decisions, around the weather.
that's definitely interesting because I think things like power outages are not something that are always accounted for, but also are a massive disruption to operations. And whether
Yeah,
that's brokerages, shippers, whoever it may be, carrier groups as well, dispatch companies, whoever it is, it's going to impact their operations. So I think that's definitely something that can definitely be another really good like add on to understand like, hey, are our warehouses going to go down? Is our main sales facility going to go down? Like, what is weather is going to impact us the most? Now, how easy is Weather Optics to use? Are you guys like app based, web based? Are you guys mobile, tablet friendly? Is it easy for like a 1 man or 2 man, carrier group to use? How does that work?
yeah, we try to give a lot of different options for how you can access our data. So,
That's good.
we have the integrations with the ELD providers, and we basically have like a web based portal. So you get a username,
Mm,
login, you can see where all your trucks are, you can see what the weather impact is on trucks in real time or out to 7 days on any planned shipment. And then we also have an API. So some of the bigger companies like to pull in our API directly and pull it into whatever TMS or even
mm,
homegrown system that they have. And then even with those ELD connections, like we can still send alerts to those devices, right? So even if you're a smaller fleet, as long as you're using an ELD provider that we connect to, you can have a couple of drivers on basically just getting alerts right every time that there's some
mm.
kind of issue. So again, we try to tailor to everyone, and we also build a lot of custom integrations. So some of the really big trucking companies have a lot of they might have certain needs, and so we really try to build around and be like a true partner to
Yeah.
anyone in the space.
I love that. I think there's a lot of companies that try, kind of like what you said. Like this industry is not a one size fit all, and I think that a lot of companies try to shoehorn everyone into like that one size fits all approach, and I think that
Right.
it misses the mark, right? And it becomes just an okay product instead of being we have a great product that's flexible for everyone. Um, and what you're providing is so vital. Weather impacts us on an everyday basis, and having um, those models in place to be able to say, hey, this is what's going to happen is dire for a lot of especially mid
Yep.
market companies who are trying to have some of those massive growth, and if some of these big weather events could have a massive impact on their operations.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
So you said, I know, I think I maybe pushed over this a little bit, Scott. But how does like how do shippers on like a lane to lane level, like if they've got 5,000 lanes they need to analyze, how easy is that for them to be able to analyze? Is that something that you guys can like help with, or is that like a lot of manual side? How does that kind of work on a large scale process?
Yeah, we can analyze both historically and predictively, right? So, like, if someone wanted to analyze all of their lanes across the U.S. or across the world, we have data going back 15 years. So, we're actually about to
Oh
release a
wow.
really cool study that's like, what are the worst lanes during the winter? And I'm going to take a poll and see what people think. And I feel like I already know what it might be, but we have that data available so that companies can see historically how lanes are impacted. And
Yeah.
then predictively, right, you can also, like, a major shipper could save all of their key lanes with us. And then every day
Hmm.
we're updating, hey, what time is this lane going to be impacted by what type of weather? What's the delay time? Are there other lane options that would avoid, delay on that shipment? Super important for shippers, especially like in the CPG, food space.
Mm.
They're penalized for being late, right? So, like, if
Yes.
you're a company and you're bringing in food to like a Kroger or a Walmart, and you miss, your time window, that adds up, especially if you're a large shipper. So,
Yeah.
being able to account for weather and adjust your arrival times, or even look back, right, and say, hey, this was late due to weather, can
Mm.
save a ton of money in just late fee fines, for some of these guys.
I think that that's really interesting, and I love that you guys, like to have fun with it too, and not just put out like a lot of reports. Like I see a lot of the weather reports you guys put out, and it's really, really, really interesting because it's a lot of maps. It's a lot of talking about the actual like locations of weather and impacts that are going to be seen. I think that's really interesting because it's not like extremely granular to where you have to be like a weather person to understand, or it's very easy for everyone to be able to interpret. So you guys put out a lot of these weather reports. You guys put one out earlier today, like you said, or are putting one out today. What impact does putting out some of those reports do you think have, for you guys, and how do you think that that adds value for some of the people or groups looking to add weather for kind of their teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, like, my goal, every Monday I post like the top five worst weather lanes, and I'm hoping to give people a taste of what's possible with our software, right? That goes for
Yeah.
brokers, goes for shippers, goes for carriers, anyone moving goods. It's relevant for. And then the report we put out today was cool because it was a case study on like the nor'easter yesterday, right? So we
Yeah.
looked at like three or four distinct impacts that happened. There was crazy flooding in South Carolina, crazy flooding in New Hampshire. There was the I-94 pileup that happened in Michigan yesterday. So,
I saw that. Yeah.
my team instantly went back after the storm, right? And we looked, hey, what was WeatherOptics forecasting for this event? And then we put together a quick report and, threw it out to the public so people can see, how would I use WeatherOptics data to avoid this accident or avoid this roadway, or close these stores down that might be impacted by flooding. So, that was kind of the idea behind that one that we put out.
I think that's interesting because it's kind of like judging yourself in public, like hey, this is what our data said. This is what you could have expected or predicted with that data, and this is kind of what the actual impacts were, and then how you guys or how the data could have been used. I think that's really interesting, and I think that is definitely actionable for a lot of people, right? If even if they're just looking at your data on a day to day or on every Monday, I think it helps them see, okay, especially if they've got freight in a specific lane or even close to those lanes, they can like kind of look at the weather or talk to boots on the ground and say, hey, like how is the weather actually looking, or just kind of makes them think, okay, maybe I do need some kind of weather
Yeah,
source telling me other than the weather channel, because like I said, you can look and there's definitely some other um, tools that have weather in them as well, but I don't think it's as well forecasted or as well put together as what I've seen with what Weather Optics does.
totally. There's a lot of tools that are on the market, and a lot of them are just like, National Weather Service alerts, right? Which is great to
Yeah.
see those in real time. But the idea of being able to know several hours or several days in advance, I think that makes all the difference. Like I always like to say,
Yeah.
a driver going through a snowstorm, it's great to alert them that, hey, you're in a snowstorm, but they can also look out their window, right, and see that they're in a blizzard. What's important is that like 6 hours before or 2 days
Yeah.
before, they understand that that's going to happen, and then you can take the right precautions. Maybe you take a different lane. Maybe you pull over at a certain rest stop before you get there, right? So that type of stuff is where our focus really is on.
Yeah, I love that because it really does add a lot of value and impact for drivers, for brokers, for shippers, for freight forwarders, whoever's in the space and really needs to depend on time deliveries or just knowing that their shipments are safe, their drivers are safe, whatever it may be. There's a lot of ways to utilize this data that I think are really important. And that's why I wanted to have you on, Scott, because I think it's vital. Let me ask you this, as we, kind of start to wrap up here, I want to ask you this. So you had mentioned that there's going to be some cool stuff coming out, quarter one, maybe quarter two. What's kind of maybe something that you're really excited about that you can maybe talk about a little bit, about, what you guys have upcoming?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about what we have being released that I sort of alluded to earlier, but we
Yeah,
have
please.
something called our events API, which my team has been working on for a
Mm,
while, where instead of just giving you, a risk score or the lane analysis, excuse me, we're actually targeting full events, right? So like could be a
okay.
volcano, could be a earthquake, could be a
Yeah.
wildfire, and we will tell you all of your lanes or locations or assets that are in that basically area of the
Mm.
event. So we're calling it the events API, and I think it'll make it even easier to use our data, effectively.
I love that. I think that that's a very big thing for everyone because then they can see really quickly, okay, this is what's impacted. They don't have to, maybe go look at each individual asset. They can see right away, this is what's been impacted. This is what we've got to get immediate attention on. I think that's really cool. When do you expect that to be out? That'd be quarter one, quarter two. How soon is that coming?
Doing some beta testing right now with a couple of prospects and customers, and so sometime probably in Q1, I would imagine that will be released, and we'll make a big announcement. But yeah, really excited about that. Especially relevant. I don't know if you saw, but there was, Iceland's having this volcano right now.
Oh yeah.
There's been a ton of earthquakes up there, so um, yeah, we're trying to get this out as quick as we can.
No, I love that. I think that that's going to be really important for everyone. Let me ask you one more question, Scott. Are you a sports fan at all?
Big baseball guy, also a football guy, but I'm a Giants fan, so I've been less of a football
Oh man,
guy
I
recently. And
understand.
I'm also a Mets fan, so it's tough
That's
here in New
tough.
York. It's
That's
not
tough.
good vibes. Yeah.
I feel you. So I'm a diehard Chicago sports fan. Bears, Bulls, and Cubs. I like the White Sox a little bit, just not when they play the Cubs. But I feel you there. It's been rough. Anything you're looking forward to sports wise? Are you hoping the Giants finally sign someone? Are you hoping they shed someone? What are you looking for? Something good, football, basketball, soccer, hockey wise. What's something you're looking forward to, maybe sports wise, if one of your teams gets better or maybe a
You know, my
prediction?
my focus is always the Mets. I got to be honest. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping we sign this pitcher from Japan, Yamamoto, that a lot of teams are fighting for right now. He seems to be this incredible pitcher, and the Mets could use some pitching desperately right now. So
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see if that happens, but that
What do
definitely looking
you
forward.
uh, what do you think about Otani and his 10-year, $700 million deal? I think I got into the wrong industry. I think I should have been a,
It's
a baseball
crazy.
player.
It's crazy, and it's also like they're deferring the payments for 10 years, right? So he's making $2 million
It's
dollars a year,
it's so
and
insane.
they can go out and keep spending. So I mean, it's annoying as a non-Dodgers fan, but good for them, right? And good for Otani. He obviously is incredible, and so yeah, happy for him.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I thought that, I was shocked when I heard that he deferred all of the money basically to the end of the contract, and
Crazy.
he figured I'll get $2 million a year, and then I've got sponsorships that'll
Yeah,
pay
right. He's got
probably
$40
another
million.
five. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what do you need? Like, it just makes it's a smart move. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So,
Yeah.
Scott, I really appreciate you coming on. I think that what you're doing is really interesting. As you guys, roll out some new features, I definitely want to have you back and talk about some more weather. If we have some massive weather related event, we'll have to have you on the show, talk about it at some point. Where can people find you in Weather Optics, so that if they want to check you guys out, they can see that, or they can see some of those weather reports you guys put out as well.
Yeah, definitely can follow me on LinkedIn for those weather reports. Just search my name and Weather Optics and it should come up. And then can go to our website at weatheroptics.co. All of our information will be there. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, man. No, anytime. And if you guys liked today's show and you like Scott, make sure you guys do check out his links. They will be all in the description, in the podcast or in the YouTube. If you guys like today's show, make sure you guys like and review. Giving us 5 stars does help us a ton. Don't forget to check out our newsletters. Those do drop on Monday and Wednesday, thinkfreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you.